Here's section 1 of your story, fully fleshed out with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag section 1. The Alien Perspective, Initial Encounter. The bridge of the Zeldar Dominion battlecruiser, Vraxis Talon, hummed with controlled energy as High Strategist Vorsk surveyed the holographic star map before him. He stood tall, his exoskeletal plating gleaming under the dim red lights of the command deck. The Zeldar were an ancient and proud species, their empire spanning countless star systems. Their dominance had never been challenged, and no species had dared stand against them in open war for centuries. Vorsk's mandibles twitched in annoyance. A new and unexpected anomaly had appeared on the scanners. An unknown vessel had entered Zeldar-controlled space. A vessel of immense size, unlike anything recorded in their vast archives. "Confirm the readings," he ordered, his voice clicking with authority. A junior officer, his smaller frame hunched in submission, tapped at his console. "Confirmed, High Strategist. The vessel is large, nearly twice the length of our own battlecruisers. Its composition is unknown. Defensive shielding appears active, and its energy readings are fluctuating in a manner inconsistent with any known civilization." Vorsk narrowed his deep-set eyes, scanning the data feed. The ship, whatever it was, showed no signs of recognizing their presence, nor had it responded to standard identification hails. "Could it be a rogue vessel from the Zoltrax conglomerate?" asked Subcommander Rilvek, stepping forward. "Perhaps an experimental warship from the Yexari Union?" Vorsk doubted it. The Zoltrax, a species of cowardly traitors, had no warships of this magnitude. The Yexari, though technologically competent, were methodical in diplomacy. If they had created such a vessel, they would have boasted of it already. "No," Vorsk said finally. "This is something new." That fact alone made it a potential threat. Hashtag first contact. A display of Zeldar might. The alien vessel drifted slowly through the void, its black hull absorbing distant starlight. The ship had an ominous presence, sleek, angular, and utterly alien. Its design lacked the usual gaudy markings of lesser species, no insignias, no heraldry, only cold, unbroken plating that exuded silent authority. Still, the laws of the Dominion were clear. Unauthorized vessels in Zeldar space would submit or be destroyed. "Establish fleet formation," Vorsk commanded. "Show them our strength." Across the sector, 10 Zeldar warships adjusted their vectors, encircling the foreign vessel in a loose blockade. Their plasma cannons swiveled into position, their missile bays primed. "This will end swiftly," Rilvek muttered. Vorsk agreed. No species had ever resisted the Zeldar fleet. If this vessel carried a lesser race, they would capitulate immediately. If they refused, their ship would become little more than drifting wreckage. "Transmit our standard ultimatum," he ordered. The communications officer nodded and activated the wideband transmission. A deep, guttural voice resonated through the void. "Unknown vessel, you have entered sovereign space of the Zeldar Dominion. Power down your weapons, deactivate your engines, and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will be met with lethal force. You have 1 planetary cycle to respond." Vorsk waited. The bridge remained silent, save for the distant hum of the ship's power core. And yet, no response. The alien ship remained motionless, neither retreating nor advancing. It made no attempt to communicate, no attempt to show hostility or submission. Rilvek's mandibles twitched. "Do they not understand us?" "They understand," Vorsk said slowly. "They are simply ignoring us." A ripple of unease passed through the command deck. No species had ever disregarded a Zeldar ultimatum. Lesser species groveled, begged, or obeyed. Even stronger empires at least negotiated. This silence, this complete lack of reaction, was more terrifying than defiance. Hashtag escalation, a reckless challenge. High Strategist Vorsk turned toward the weapons officer. "Charge primary cannons. Fire a warning shot across their bow. I want them to see our power." The energy cannons powered up, glowing a searing violet. A bolt of plasma discharged, streaking through the void like a miniature sun. It missed the alien vessel by mere meters, a deliberate show of precision. Still, no reaction. Vorsk's claws curled into a fist. He had never encountered such arrogance. Enough. Fire upon their engines, he commanded. This time, 3 warships launched a controlled volley. Plasma beams and guided torpedoes shot forward, their destructive force capable of reducing a planetary base to rubble. But then, the impossible happened. The moment the weapons impacted, the alien vessel's shields flickered, a strange, dark shimmer, like light being swallowed by an abyss. The energy blasts disappeared. The torpedoes detonated ineffectively against the ship's hull, leaving no visible damage. Silence fell upon the bridge. Impossible, Rilvek whispered. No shield technology in the known galaxy could absorb that level of firepower without any visible impact. Even the mightiest fortresses suffered some damage. Scan their defenses. Vorsk barked. High strategist, the scanner officer stammered. Our instruments cannot penetrate their hull. Their shielding is unquantifiable. Vorsk felt something he had not experienced in his long, decorated career. Doubt. His fleet, his empire's finest warriors, had just struck this unknown vessel with overwhelming force, and the enemy had not even acknowledged it. This was not the behavior of a species caught off guard. This was the confidence of an apex predator. For the first time, Vorsk questioned if the Zeldar were truly the strongest species in the galaxy. High strategist, a voice interrupted, trembling. The vessel is moving. On the star map, the alien warship had begun a slow rotation. No thrusters flared, no visible signs of propulsion. The ship simply shifted. It was now facing them directly. And then, a single energy signature surged from within the vessel. High strategist, the weapons officer cried. They are preparing to fire. Vorsk stared at the dark, unyielding form of the warship, a cold realization sinking into his core. The aliens had let them strike first, and now it was their turn. This section sets up the tension and mystery surrounding the human warship while building suspense through the Zeldar's growing fear. Let me know if you want any modifications before moving on to the next section. Rocket. Section 2. The Show of Power. Humanity's War Doctrine. For the first time in Zeldar history, a battle had begun with them as the underdogs. High strategist Vorsk watched in frozen silence as the alien warship, silent, unyielding, turned to face them. A deep energy signature pulsed from within its black hull, an eerie glow forming along unseen seams. The Vraxis Talon's sensors screamed warnings across the bridge. Energy levels rising exponentially, the sensor officer chittered in panic. I do not understand, High Strategist. The readings are beyond our scale. A surge of static crackled through the comms as every Zeldar warship in the battle group reported the same thing. The human vessel was preparing to fire, and its power output was incomprehensible. Vorsk snapped out of his daze. His species had ruled through ruthless efficiency, and even now, he refused to falter. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Activate full shielding and deploy countermeasures. But it was already too late. The first shot, a weapon beyond comprehension. The human vessel fired. It wasn't a volley of plasma or a swarm of missiles. It wasn't the type of weapon the Zeldar understood. Instead, it was a single, hyper-accelerated projectile, a long, sleek, tungsten-encased round, fired from a railgun operating at near-light speed. Vorsk barely had time to process the readings before it struck. The lead warship of his fleet, the Draction Blade, took the hit straight through its bow. For a fraction of a second, the kinetic round passed through its shields as if they weren't even there. The impact was not an explosion. It was devastation. The round tore through the Draction Blade in an instant, punching through the ship's heavily armored core as if it were made of paper. A blinding flash of heat and debris erupted from the other side, and then nothing. The warship drifted in silence, a gaping hole where its command deck had been. Then the explosion followed. Not from a human weapon itself, but from the warship's core rupturing from the sheer force of impact. The Draxian Blade, one of the most formidable ships in the Zeldar fleet, was obliterated. The shockwave rippled through space. On the Vraxis Talon, stunned silence filled the bridge. The crew, once so confident, were now motionless, paralyzed by what they had just witnessed. "One shot," Rilvek whispered, his voice barely audible. His mandibles trembled. "One shot. ###, the human warship begins its hunt." The alien vessel remained still, its railguns adjusting their angle with cold precision. It had not fired in rage, nor in panic. It had waited for the Zeldar to reveal themselves as threats, and then demonstrated overwhelming superiority in a single instant. And now it was preparing to fire again. "All ships, fall back. Regroup," Vorsk barked. But panic had already taken hold. Two smaller Zeldar cruisers broke formation, attempting to retreat at full speed. The human warship responded instantly. 2 more railgun rounds fired. The first round caught the fleeing cruiser in its engines, causing an immediate detonation that engulfed the ship in a fireball of burning atmosphere and shrapnel. The second round grazed the other ship, ***, but even a grazing hit from such a weapon was catastrophic, ***. Half of the cruiser's hull was sheared off as if it had been sliced with a monomolecular blade. The remaining wreckage drifted, venting oxygen and bodies into the void. The human warship never missed. ###, a hopeless battle, the breakdown of Zeldar strategy. Vorsk gripped the edge of his command console, forcing himself to think. He had fought in countless engagements, but this was not a battle. It was an execution. They had always been the apex predators. They had conquered planets, wiped out species, forced entire civilizations into servitude. Now, in the face of a single warship from an unknown race, they were the prey. "We must change tactics," Vorsk hissed, trying to suppress the creeping terror in his veins. "High strategist," the weapons officer stammered. "Our plasma cannons are ineffective. Missiles cannot lock. What do we?" A deep, resonating voice interrupted him. ***, you should not have fired upon us. ***. The bridge went silent. The voice had come from the alien warship. It was their first transmission. Cold, unfeeling, utterly certain. ***. And then the alien vessel activated a new weapon. ###, the final lesson, peace through strength. A low hum vibrated through space as the front of the human vessel opened, revealing something far worse than a railgun. Energy readings spiked to critical levels. The Zeldar scanners barely had time to process what was happening before a beam of concentrated energy erupted from the human warship, slicing through the void like a lance from a god. The beam never wavered. It did not stop at one ship. It did not stop at 2. The beam cut through 3 Zeldar warships in one continuous motion, severing them cleanly in half. There were no explosions this time. Only silent death, the remains of mighty warships splitting apart, their crews gone in an instant. The survivors had no fight left in them. "High strategist," Rilvek said, his voice broken. "We must retreat." Vorsk stared at the screen, his claws shaking. He had never considered retreat before. Never. But he had never encountered a species like this. "All ships," he croaked, his throat dry. "Withdraw." The remaining warships didn't hesitate. Engines flared, and the once proud battle group turned tail and fled, limping back into the darkness of space. The alien warship made no move to follow. It allowed them to run. And that, more than anything, proved the final, undeniable truth. The humans had not seen them as enemies, not even as opponents. They had seen them as insignificant. ###, the silence left behind. As the Vraxis Talon jumped to FTL speed, Vorsk sat in stunned silence, unable to look away from the image still burned into his mind. That black warship, floating motionless in the wreckage of what had once been his fleet. It had never needed to boast. It had never needed to threaten. It had simply acted. And now, the galaxy would never be the same. This section emphasizes humanity's overwhelming technological superiority, their doctrine of immediate retaliation, and the sheer terror the aliens feel. Let me know if you'd like any tweaks before moving on to Section 3. Rocket. Section 3. The aftermath. Fear spreads through the Dominion. The Vraxis Talon hurtled through the void, its engines burning at maximum capacity as it fled the battlefield. The crew remained eerily silent, the usual chatter of officers and engineers replaced by a suffocating tension. None dared speak of what had just transpired. High Strategist Vorsk sat rigid in his command seat, his claws gripping the armrests with such force that they threatened to crack. His mind raced, trying to process the impossibility of what had just occurred. The Zeldar Dominion, an empire feared across countless systems, had been humbled. Not in a prolonged war, not in a strategic conflict, but in a single encounter, by a lone warship of unknown origin. This was not how battles were supposed to unfold. This was not how the Zeldar lost. And yet, Vorsk had no choice but to acknowledge the truth. He had led an entire battle group against what he had assumed to be an inferior force, only to watch his ships be annihilated with mathematical precision. The human warship had never been threatened. It had never faltered. It had been playing with them. The moment that realization struck him, Vorsk felt something foreign, something utterly alien, creep into his core. Fear. The return to Zeldar Prime. An unwelcome report. The Vraxis Talon emerged from hyperspace above Zeldar Prime, the capital of the Dominion. The sight of the world, its sprawling megacities, the endless fleet formations in orbit, should have filled Vorsk with confidence. But instead, it felt small. For the first time, he questioned whether the power they had wielded for millennia was nothing more than an illusion. The warship docked at the High Command Citadel, an imposing fortress carved into the very crust of the planet. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, a tradition meant to honor victorious warriors. But Vorsk felt no honor in this return. As he and his remaining officers entered the Grand War Council chamber, they were met with the piercing gazes of Supreme Chancellor Zareth and the assembled strategists of the Dominion. Zareth, a towering figure with deep crimson exoskeletal plating, studied Vorsk with narrowed eyes. "You return with fewer ships than you left with," he observed coldly. "Explain." Vorsk hesitated. How could he explain? How did one describe an enemy so vastly superior that resistance had been pointless? He took a breath, steeling himself. "We encountered a previously unknown species. A single warship. He hesitated, then forced the words out. "It destroyed half our fleet." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some scoffed. Others clicked their mandibles in disbelief. "A single warship?" One of the elder strategists sneered. "Impossible." Vorsk's mandibles tightened. "I thought the same." The room fell silent. "What manner of weaponry?" Zareth demanded. "Railguns," Vorsk said simply. "Firing at relativistic speeds." The room remained still. Then laughter. "Railguns." One of the commanders chittered in amusement. "Obsolete technology. Kinetic weapons are primitive, mere slug throwers." Vorsk's eyes burned with rage. These were not primitive. These were fired with enough force to pierce our warships in a single shot. Our shields, our armor. Nothing stopped them. The amusement died instantly. And then, Vorsk continued, they deployed an energy weapon capable of cutting through multiple warships in a single shot. Silence. Even Zareth, who had lived through countless wars, showed a flicker of unease. "This is absurd," another strategist hissed. "If such a power existed, we would have heard of it before." Vorsk exhaled sharply. "We have now." #denial. panic, and the fragile illusion of power. The council chamber erupted. Some called for immediate war. Others demanded that the fleet be reinforced, doubled in size. But beneath their bravado, Vorsk saw the truth. They were afraid, and fear led to desperation. Zareth raised a hand, silencing the room. His voice was measured, but Vorsk detected the faintest trace of uncertainty beneath it. "This human species," Zareth said slowly. "You believe they are a threat?" Vorsk stared at him. "They did not chase us," he admitted. They could have. They could have wiped us out. But they allowed us to leave." "And why would they do that?" Vorsk's voice was hollow. "Because they did not see us as a threat." Zareth's eyes darkened. "Then we must make them see otherwise," one of the strategists growled. "We will mobilize the Dominion fleet. We will crush them before they become a true enemy." Vorsk slammed his fist onto the table. The room jolted at the outburst. "Did you not hear anything I just said?" His voice was low, but carried a deadly edge. "They destroyed us without effort. If we escalate this, they will not see it as war. They will see it as extermination." The room fell silent again. Vorsk looked each commander in the eye. "We do not know how many ships they have. We do not know the extent of their technology. But I will tell you this." He leaned forward. If that single warship was only a scout? If that was merely a fraction of their power? The words hung in the air. Zareth exhaled, deep in thought. Finally he spoke. "Then tell me, High Strategist," he said. "If war is not the answer, then what is?" Vorsk hesitated. He had been bred for war, trained for conquest. The idea of negotiation had never crossed his mind. But now it was their only option. "We contact them," he said. "We find out what they want. And we do it before we give them a reason to want us dead." ###, the beginning of a new era. For the first time in its history, the Zeldar Dominion would not expand through force. It would survive through submission. Vorsk had no doubts. The age of Zeldar supremacy was over, and the era of humanity had begun. This section explores the political fallout of the battle, the sheer panic among the Zeldar leadership, and Vorsk's reluctant realization that war is not an option. Let me know if you want any adjustments before moving to Section 4, Rocket. ###, Section 4, First Contact, a galaxy forever changed. The Zeldar Dominion, for all its might and history, had never initiated contact with another species from a position of weakness. They had always dictated the terms, through power, through conquest, through the ruthless efficiency of their war machine. But now, everything had changed. For the first time in their history, the Zeldar were preparing for diplomacy born of fear. And High Strategist Vorsk would be the one to deliver their plea. ###, a message sent into the void. The decision had not been unanimous. Many on the War Council still believed that the Dominion should strike back, that they should amass their forces and retaliate. They refused to believe that the humans could not be defeated. But Vorsk had been there. He had seen the human warship's cold precision, its terrifying power, the casual manner in which it had torn through his fleet. And he understood something the others did not. This was not a war that could be won. So, against the outcry of the more aggressive factions, Supreme Chancellor Zareth had given the order. Contact would be made. Vorsk stood in the primary communication chamber of the Dominion's High Command, his mandibles clicking with restrained tension. Before him, a holographic projection displayed the ominous, still image of the human warship that had shattered their illusions of superiority. A deep breath. A steadying of nerves. Then he spoke. This is High Strategist Vorsk of the Zeldar Dominion. A pause. We acknowledge our error in engaging your vessel. We seek dialogue. The message was transmitted through every known frequency, across subspace relays that reached far beyond their own systems. And then they waited. ###, the reply that shook the Dominion. Days passed. The silence was excruciating. Across the Dominion, Uncertainty spread like a virus. The War Council was divided. Some grew anxious, fearing the humans were preparing a counter-invasion, while others scoffed, claiming that the silence meant the humans had dismissed them as irrelevant. But Vorsk knew better. This was not indifference. This was calculated patience. And when the reply finally came, it shattered all expectations. The transmission was simple. No blaring war horns, no grand speech. Just a deep, measured voice. Asterisk, this is Captain Elias Varon of the UHS Titan. Your message has been received. Asterisk. A pause. Asterisk, we will talk. Asterisk. Hashtag the first meeting, face-to-face with humanity. The designated rendezvous point was a neutral sector on the edge of the Dominion's territory, a barren system with no habitable planets, nothing to give either side a strategic advantage. Vorsk arrived aboard the Vraxis Talon, accompanied by a small diplomatic escort. Every moment leading up to this had been steeped in tension, every possible contingency planned for. But when the human vessel arrived, all of those preparations seemed insignificant. It was the Titan, the very warship that had annihilated the Dominion fleet. Now, it floated before them, silent but unshakably present, a reminder of the power disparity that defined this meeting. The docking sequence was smooth. The humans had allowed them aboard. And so, for the first time in history, a Zeldar delegation stepped onto a human vessel. The humans were smaller than the Zeldar, yet there was nothing weak about them. Their movements were deliberate, their technology elegant yet functional. At the end of the corridor, waiting for them, was Captain Elias Varon, a human, the first one Vorsk had ever seen. His uniform was crisp, his posture firm. There was no arrogance in his stance, no cruelty in his eyes, only certainty. High Strategist Vorsk, the human greeted. His voice was even, calm, unthreatened. Captain Varon, Vorsk replied, forcing himself to remain composed. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Varon broke the silence. You fired first. Vorsk stiffened. It was a miscalculation. A costly one, Varon said simply. Vorsk's mandibles twitched. He had no counterargument. The Dominion had lost before they had even realized they were fighting. Why are you here, High Strategist? Varon asked. Vorsk hesitated. He could demand reparations. He could offer hollow words of apology. He could attempt to save face, to salvage the illusion that the Zeldar were still powerful. But he knew that deception would be pointless. So he did something no High Strategist had ever done before. He spoke the truth. The Zeldar Dominion has stood unchallenged for centuries, he admitted. We believed ourselves to be invincible, but we were wrong. Varon said nothing, simply listening. Vorsk continued. We wish to understand your people, your power. We wish to know what comes next. The words carried more weight than anything Vorsk had ever spoken before. This was not just a diplomatic exchange. This was a surrender, carefully veiled in words of curiosity. Hashtag humanity's answer. A new balance of power. Captain Varon studied Vorsk for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not a smirk. Not a grin of victory. A simple, knowing smile. You assumed we would conquer you, Varon said. That's not what we do. Vorsk's mandibles twitched in confusion. Then, what do you do? Varon folded his arms behind his back. We defend our own. We do not seek war, but if war comes to us, we end it. Vorsk felt a chill at those words. We are not conquerors, Varon continued, but we will never be prey. The words hung in the air. And for the first time since this encounter had begun, Vorsk truly understood. The humans had never been afraid of the Dominion. They had never been concerned with Zeldar aggression. Because, to them, the Dominion had never been a threat to begin with. Hashtag a galaxy reborn. The meeting ended with no war declaration, no demands, no ultimatums. Instead, it ended with the understanding that the Zeldar Dominion, once the dominant force in the galaxy, was no longer at the top of the food chain. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Epilogue. A warning sent to all. Weeks later, a single transmission was sent from Zeldar Prime to every known empire, kingdom, and federation across the stars. A warning. Do not provoke the humans. Do not engage their warships. We have seen what they can do. Do not make the same mistake we did. The message was simple. And across the galaxy, leaders from every species read it with quiet, uneasy understanding. Humanity had made first contact, not with words, but with power. And the universe had listened. And that's the final section. This wraps up the story with diplomacy, submission, and the realization that humanity isn't just another species. They're a force that will reshape the balance of power. Let me know if you want any tweaks or additions. Rocket Fire.